All right, we are live. Hopefully, people are here and joining in. Uh, I'll give it a second for people to get started. All right. Hello. Much to talk about today. I think I have about 5 stories I want to get through, and I feel like half of them just blew up in the past like 24 hours. So, as usual, I'll go ahead and say if you want to support this channel, go to patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. We also, if you want any question answered in between stories, leave a super chat. We'll take care of it. As always, we have Den, who is in the comments, who is helping moderate anything you all ask to make sure everything I need to see, I do get to see in between stories. So thank you to Den for helping out with that. And why don't we get started? The first thing I want to talk about seems to be the only thing anyone is talking about, which is Harrison Butker and his commencement address. So usually when there are commencement controversies involving the speakers, it's usually about who that person is and what they represent and maybe something they've said in the past. And I was thinking about like Mike Pence when he was vice president. He gave a commencement at Notre Dame, and a bunch of students walked out on him because they were unhappy with the Trump administration. Uh, More recently, you may have heard Jerry Seinfeld gave a commencement at Duke, and people are unhappy with his very pro-Israel stance and what that country is doing to Palestine and Palestinians. So, like, that's usually what we think of when we think of college commencement protests, which is why it's almost surprising that the biggest controversy involving a commencement involves Harrison Butker, who is, if you don't follow football, you don't know who this guy is. And even if you do follow football, you probably are not that familiar with who this guy is because he's a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're a good team. Like, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have Travis Kelce, they have good players, but he's not the person who would come to mind if I asked you to name someone on that team. But he was the commencement speaker at Benedictine College, which is a smaller Catholic college in Kansas. And so I'll get to why he was probably invited in a little bit. But what was surprising is that his speech was like a culture war cannonball where he's like channeling conservative pundits and the Matt Walshes of the world. He told women that they should aspire to be housewives and baby makers and trashed all that is good and holy. It was a political speech done in the name of Catholicism. And I'm going to play you some clips of it in case you haven't seen it yet. So let me start off by sharing a clip about how he wanted to talk about cultural values. Because he pointed out that a lot of the graduates there, if you spent 4 years in college and you're graduating now, well, your senior year of high school was probably stopped because of COVID, and now you're graduating. So a, a big part of your formative years, he's going to say, has to do with COVID. But that's not the only thing that's gone wrong. Let me play you a bit of this.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
Jesus. Okay. So COVID was bad, but you know what else is bad? Abortion, in vitro fertilization, surrogacy, and assisted death. Like, what the hell? Just throwing everything into one basket. And that is a growing support for degenerate cultural values. Like, my God. Okay. He's also said, like, a second after that, that everyone at Benedictine should have excitement and pride, but, quote, not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, because you know who has it easy in this country? It's LGBTQ people. So here's the thing. Everything he trashed, abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, What he said is in line with what the Catholic Church actually teaches. It's what the Pope says, it's what the Vatican wants you to believe. However, they are wildly out of step with what practicing Catholics actually believe. Just to give you some numbers here, in the US, and that's an important distinction here, in the US, 56% of Catholics who regularly attend Mass, they support abortion rights in all or most cases. There was no recent survey about Catholics and IVF that I could find, but a 2013 survey found that only 13% of Catholics said IVF was morally wrong. And that's something the Catholic Church hasn't exactly wavered on, so okay. A majority of Catholics say people have the moral right to end their lives on their own terms, like in certain circumstances. If you are living in pain, if you are constantly suffering and you're at the end of your life and you have an incurable disease, does it make moral sense to let that person say, I want to end my life on my own terms? I think it does. I think that's the moral thing to do, assuming that person is of sound mind. But the Catholic Church says, no, you're not allowed to. You got to keep living while suffering because that's what we want you to do. And that's what Butker is saying. And of course, US Catholics also overwhelmingly support same sex marriage. They even support gay clergy members, which is to say, the people in that audience listening to his speech are very likely the type of people who would support what Butker was calling degenerate cultural values. And this is so maybe you're wondering, why was this guy invited to speak at Benedictine? And the reason is, I think, in 2022, you may recall Roe v. Wade had been overturned, and a lot of states started putting referenda on the ballot saying, we want to vote on whether or not abortion rights should be protected in our state constitution. And Kansas was one of the states where that was on the ballot. And it's like, oh no, abortion rights, and we're putting it up for a vote in Kansas. This is not going to be good. But as you may recall, abortion rights was the winner in that referendum. And it was like a 60-40 margin. It wasn't really even close. Well, back when that was back when the campaigns were happening for that referendum, Harrison Butker he actually filmed an ad for the anti-abortion side of that movement. And I think he wasn't afraid to speak out on conservative issues back then. That's probably why they invited him now. But needless to say, his beliefs and the Catholic Church's beliefs are out of step with most Americans and even a hell of a lot of Catholics. Okay, here's another part I wanted to play for you because, of course, Butker wanted to trash Joe Biden, which makes for an interesting dilemma because Joe Biden may be the most famous Catholic in the country. So how do you do that? And this is what Harrison Butker said about Joe Biden.
Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it.
Yikes. Okay, first of all, I do not remember Joe Biden making a sign of the cross during an abortion rights rally. I feel like I would have known about that one, but whatever. Joe Biden has said many times over, whatever he personally thinks about abortion, and I think he's against it, he does support abortion rights as far as public policy goes, which is the right answer. So I don't care what he personally believes. That does not make him like a bad Catholic. That makes him a better politician. You know what I mean? You're supposed to separate your personal religious views from what you think is best for the country. That's how it's supposed to work. And then what else did Butker say there? He says, oh, he makes it look like you can be Catholic and pro-choice. And I know the Vatican says you can't be, but again, among practicing Catholics in the US, that's very much a reality. And you can't trash Joe Biden for supposed hypocrisy unless you're going to take the next step and say the Catholic Church should kick everyone out if they are pro-choice. And they will never do that. You know why? Because most of their churches would then empty out. Because most Catholics understand abortion rights as a moral issue. And they're on the side of morality, not what the Catholic Church says. So, like, don't just say, oh, Biden's bad at this. No, go ahead and say every single one of you who is pro-choice is a bad Catholic. Like, I want you to push more people out of the church if you're going to go down that route, you know? And then he said, from the man behind the COVID lockdowns, I assume he's talking about Dr. Fauci, who is, you know, at least culturally Catholic, though we did get a Humanist of the Year award from the American Humanist Association. But okay, Dr. Fauci. But again, COVID lockdowns were the smart thing to do scientifically. We were trying to stop the spread with a disease that we did not know much about at the time. And every sort of precaution that we took based on the best available scientific evidence has been slammed as some sort of conspiracy by right-wing people who don't know how science works. So to trash Anthony Fauci for being like the guy in charge, a Catholic who happens to be one of the most prominent scientists in the last administration, that seems like a dangerous move. And then he trashes Biden for pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America. What does he think? I assume that's talking about Biden. What does he think Biden is doing? Is he like waving a wand and turning kids trans? Because that's not how it works unless you live in right-wing bubbles. But the idea that like, oh yeah, just because you say you're a Catholic doesn't mean anything. Meanwhile, who do all these people support if not Biden? They support Donald Trump, who is a guy who violates every single thing white evangelicals have told us they value, but they think this guy represents their values. Like, what the hell? So hard to take anything Butker is saying there seriously. You can be Catholic and pro-choice. Most people are among Catholics, right? So, okay, the people calling for inclusion are not the bad guys. Okay, so then he literally, this is a short clip, but besides lying about all this stuff, Butker actually spread a very real lie, like a conservative conspiracy theory. Here it is. It's like one sentence long.
Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail.
No, they didn't. I don't know where he's getting that from. They did not pass anything like that. He is a liar. He's a kicker for the Chiefs, and he's a liar. Those are the only two things you need to know about him. So where is he getting this conspiracy theory from? He is referring to a Republican-led bill that's supposed to punish colleges that they say are anti-Semitic. They want every federally funded college to restrict or punish anti-Semitism, which sounds okay on the surface. The question is, what do you consider anti-Semitic? And some right-wing zealots like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Jewish space laser woman, she says, this bill, I'm going to vote against this Republican bill because it punishes people who claim the Jews killed Jesus, which it absolutely does not do. And by the way, even if it did, guess what? The punishment, according to that bill that Republicans are sponsoring, is not jail. So what the hell are any of these people talking about? They don't know how to read, but man, they know how to be confident in their lies. Okay, and then Butker took a shot at one of his more famous teammates and that teammate's girlfriend.
So many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners. And in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time because, as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
You know, the audience is like oohing because they get the reference. But if you don't get the reference, it's okay. And by the way, that was very clunky writing there. He's kind of saying a lot of Catholic priests, they like doing what's popular, not what's right, because they're letting their guard down and becoming overly familiar. And Taylor Swift obviously has a song where she says in there, familiarity breeds contempt. By the way, that's not a Taylor original. That one's been around for a while, that saying. I love the referring to Taylor Swift as my teammate's girlfriend, as if that's what she's known for, as if she's known for being Travis Kelce's girlfriend and nothing else. Like, what a way to win over the college kids. It's trashing not just one of the most popular players on the Kansas City Chiefs, but trashing his girlfriend, Taylor Swift, who is the most popular person in the world. Taylor Swift, of course, is a billionaire, and she became a billionaire in her own right. And Travis Kelce had nothing to do with it. And I think, and by the way, she's also obviously an icon to countless young women all over the world. I think all of that really bothers Butker because then he offered his own advice to women in the crowd because he doesn't want them becoming anything like Taylor Swift. He thinks she's the enemy. So this is the advice he gives for women. It's a longer clip, but oh man, it is bad. Have fun with this one. This is the one that's been getting headlines.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
There you go, ladies. The most important title you can aspire to is homemaker. Imagine working your ass off for 4 years, studying intensely for every exam, maybe working a job on the side to help pay for tuition, um, only to have this overpaid athlete tell you you are wasting your time by thinking about your career because you're not having babies. Like, what an insult to every woman in that crowd. And there's nothing wrong if you want to be a stay at home mom, if you want to be a housewife, and if that's all you want to do, I could care less. That's fine. But like, it is weird to say he alluded to, my wife didn't have a life worth living until she married me and got knocked up. His wife was useless until that point. And all women, he says, are basically worthless unless they're attached to a man and pregnant. It is also the height of arrogance to tell women they should be more like a stay-at-home wife when he has the luxury of a multi-million-dollar paycheck. Like, it's a lot easier for one person in a relationship to stay at home and take care of the kids when the other person is making millions of dollars for kicking a ball. The last thing college graduates need is some sort of purity culture sermon as they're graduating from college. It's just wild, and it's annoying. I am surprised after he said my wife like aspired to be a homemaker. That applause lasted for a while. I was kind of hoping maybe some of those students would walk out and protest in a way. That said, I think it's unfair to ask college students to like protest their own graduation. Like, they worked hard for that day. They should be allowed to enjoy themselves. Um, Jessica Valenti, the feminist writer, actually pointed out that one woman has actually very famously rejected Harrison Butker's advice, and that would be his own mother. Because Elizabeth Butker I'm reading this from Jessica's post, she is a medical physicist in the oncology department at Emory University's medical school. And Jessica writes, I don't know what kind of mommy issues Butker is working through, but it would have been nice if he did so with his therapist rather than from behind a podium. his mother is a cancer doctor. And he's saying, that's a dumb idea. She should have just stayed home and raised me. How arrogant, how annoying, how sexist, misogynistic, just wild. And maybe the biggest takeaway for me from this speech is that none of it actually seems surprising because everything he said is what Republicans have been pushing for throughout the country as a whole. Like, if they had the votes to ban abortion, to ban IVF, they would absolutely go through with it at the federal level. If they found a way to keep women at home and to make the gender gap disparity worse, they absolutely would. I mean, they would make life worse for LGBTQ people. They would put certain religious beliefs above other people's religious beliefs. So Butker, he just said out loud what a lot of politicians in the GOP just say using usually coded language. I think that's the striking thing about his speech. It doubles as the GOP platform. It's just this mix of religious fundamentalism and right-wing paranoia. There is no room in his Christian bubble for people he doesn't understand, right? So here's a question then. Why did the administration think this guy would make a good commencement speaker? Right? And I know he did the pro-life ad like 2 years ago, but why? What are you hoping for? Because, I mean, I know I had a commencement speaker when I graduated from college. It was forgettable. Don't remember what she said. She was just a famous person that we could get. But if you think about it, a commencement speaker, at the very least, is supposed to represent success and give students a model for what they could become now that they have their degree. And what message is Benedictine trying to send? That people who dare to disagree with the church are not welcome here? That women who pay tuition to them are wasting their money? What an irresponsible decision. I hope picking this guy haunts the school for years to come. I hope some students are like, I can't go to this place. I know what they're teaching. I know what they stand for, because the administration supported what he is saying. The funny thing is, at one point in the speech, Butker actually said he had criticism for bad leaders who don't stay in their lane. It's like, buddy, you're a kicker and you're here talking about politics and religion. Like, stick to football. Shut up and dribble. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? At least if you're going to talk about politics, have the sense to know what you're talking about. Then it's all right. This guy like is trying out for a post football career working for like Newsmax or something. The funniest thing, by the way, in all of this, I wanted to show you this. I think it was yesterday, all the NFL teams released their schedule, and it's become a thing in the NFL where every team gets an early copy of what their schedule is, and there's a certain time when they're allowed to share that with their fans. And every team now does a huge like built up video spectacle that's stupid and weird and funny. And the Los Angeles Chargers, they did their schedule release and they did it all in The Sims. And it's all just really weird, bad computer graphics for everything. But one of the things they showed in there, I want to show this to you, is this image of, oh, look, number 7 wearing Kansas City Chiefs colors. That would be, I think, a reference to Harrison Butker. And where is he? Oh, he's in the kitchen because, that's where he belongs. I don't know if that was intentional, but everyone online seemed to catch the reference and it did not go unnoticed. I'm going to stop there for now, but happy to take questions before we get to the next story. It seems like there are several aspects of Christianity that promote suffering. Indeed, and listening to Harrison Butker at your commencement is one of them. How is this a commencement speech? If I was asked by my college to do a commencement speech, I would not be talking any of those issues. Maybe something on success. How are they to succeed? Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing because that speech is not about, hey, students, here's what you can do in the future. Here's what you have to look forward to. Here's advice that you can use. It's, here's me. Here's what I think about Catholicism. Like, it is a very egotistical speech that he was giving. It's not just ignorant. It's like he made it all about him and nothing about the students, unless you think telling students, now that you have your degree, walk across the stage, pick up your diploma, throw it in the bonfire, ladies. Like, if that's what he was trying to do, okay. Um, but yeah, like it wasn't a memorable speech in any good way. There are some commencement speeches that make the rounds because they are so inspirational and so eloquent. This is not one of them. This is one you pass around because, oh my God, the man speaking is insane. The college YouTube channel turned off the comments section. Can I be honest? Like, I was surprised Benedictine even kept the video up because I do not think this is what the school wants to be defined by. So I'm surprised they even kept the commencement address up in the first place. My great aunt has her headstone already made and placed in the Catholic area of the cemetery, and on it has "Proud Democrat" on it. She's 82 years at this time. Love it. Hope she sticks around for a while, but I love that after she dies, that's the message that's going to be on there. Thanks, Wendy. That's great. Yes, like and subscribe, and then invite me to give your commencement addresses. It'll be wonderful. All right, give me 1 second while I pull this up, get rid of all my Harrison Butker stuff. I figured you could use a light story, and this is the funniest, dumbest church scandal I have seen in such a long time, and it makes me happy because it's just that dumb. Okay, here's the deal. It involves this Texas megachurch called the Lake Point Church. It's Lake Point with an E at the end, like ye old shoppy. So Lake Point Church, it's one of those mega churches that has a bunch of campuses around the cities. And in the city of Rockwall, they have a campus. And what they want to do, this is like just outside Dallas, I believe. That campus gets really busy on Sunday mornings. And if they have like a weeknight service, it gets really packed. And so they want to put a stoplight outside the entrance to that particular campus. And okay, that kind of makes sense. If there's a lot of traffic, you might want a stoplight there. But here's the thing, like, a church doesn't just get to put up a stoplight, they have to ask the city for permission. And then the city says, okay, well, we need to know the numbers, how much traffic is going through here. And someone's going to pay for a study to be done. Because, of course, why would you spend a lot of money on a stoplight when, like, you could just put up a much cheaper stop sign, right? So, like, if the city's going to go through with putting a stoplight up there, they want to know that it's worth their time. But the church wants it. And so they said, we're going to commission this study. We're going to work with the city to make this happen. This is not about church state separation. All of this is fine. So we're good. They're going to put up money for the study. We're all good. I think there's also a selfish reason that this church wants that stoplight at that intersection, because if some of you live near a megachurch, you may have noticed that when they have services, there are actual cops who are directing traffic in that area. I have one of those near where I am. And the thing is, those cops do not come for free. Any outside group, including religious groups, they have to pay those cops to, like, basically rent them out because there's heavy traffic and, like, a lot of busy intersections and stuff. And so if you're going to pull off an event like that, you have to hire security. You have to hire cops to direct that traffic. And right now, this mega church, Lake Point, they have to direct traffic around that entrance. They don't want to pay the cops for that. So they also want the stoplight for that reason. So they can have the stoplight and they don't have to pay the cops anymore. That's my theory anyway as to why they want it. But again, all they have to do, they commission the study, they go to the city, they say, look, lots of traffic, give us a stoplight. And they even said they'll pay for it. Okay, fine. All of that is good. But this is a Christian megachurch we are talking about. Do you think they're interested in just doing what they're supposed to do when they could manipulate the truth to get exactly what they want? I mean, this is a megachurch. This is what they do best. They will always lie if it's in their best interests. And this story comes from Religion News Service. Their excellent reporter, Bob Smetana, he got a copy of emails that were sent from the church to a lot of church leaders. And you will not believe this. Let me share this with you. This is the email that was sent from Lake Point Church. Let's read this together, shall we? This was sent to the leaders of their small groups, like their small worship groups, because there's so many people at their services, they can't get to know everyone. So they have small groups and you meet and you worship that way. Fine. So they sent this email to every life group leader. And they said, we want you all to tell your little small groups to do the following, okay? Calling all life groups. In an effort to ease traffic, better serve our city, and provide a better experience for everyone attending our church, we need your help to get a traffic light at the entrance. Check this out. Life groups can help by signing up for shifts on those dates, May 14th through the 19th. Everyone in the life group can sign up for as many shifts as they would like across the week, maximum 1 shift per hour. Each shift is a commitment to drive the prescribed route 10 times within that hour shift. Let's pause here for just a moment. What they are saying is, hey, we all want a stoplight in this particular intersection, so we want all of you to drive your cars in circles around that area, and not just do that, but like sign up for time slots so there's constant traffic around where we want our stoplight. And you could sign up for as many shifts as you want. And look at this. Each shift is a commitment to drive 10 times within that hour. It's great if you make more than 10 laps, but laps are only counted toward that specific shift. There's no rolling over here. You better do 10 laps in an hour. Drive faster, grandma. And they literally had a link to Sign Up Genius so people could sign up to take slots to drive. And they said, don't worry, we'll get you the route you have to drive. It's a circle. It's not that hard on this Monday. And then what does it say? Once you've signed up and you're ready, begin your shift. What does the rest of this say? It is essential you keep your commitment within the hour you sign up for. If we miss 1 block of time, we miss the entire exercise. This is the email the church sent out to their small group leaders. Yikes. And by the way, I was able to get a copy of that Sign Up Genius, some screenshots from that sign up link. And this is interesting too, because check this out on Sign Up Genius. Like they sent this out, people started signing up fast. And this one's interesting because Nicholas Costello, if I have this right, he's the pastor of that Rockwell campus church. Like, he's not some random dude. He's the pastor saying, like, yep, I'm going to drive my SUV in a giant circle. I got nothing better to do. So people are signing up to do this, okay? So this is what the church planned to do. They were trying to goose up the traffic numbers while their own engineering firm that they hired, supposedly an outside engineering firm, was tallying data about how much traffic there is. They were trying to boost those numbers so that they could lie, so that those numbers would look higher, so that they could go to the city and say, there's so much traffic, we need the traffic light, give us a traffic light. Like, oh my God, it's not just shady, it's just dumb. Like, if you don't have that much traffic, you don't need the stoplight. So, of course, that email to the church and those screenshots, they started leaking to the public, and that's when all shit hit the fan. I know one of you is saying this. I'm going to pull this up right now. Wouldn't that be bearing false witness? My silly friend. No, it doesn't count as a lie if you do it in the name of Jesus. Haven't I taught you anything? So it turns out after their little scam got revealed, the city said, we're not going to use the traffic counts that your engineering firm is about to give us. City said, we're not taking this data. It doesn't count. So good on them. They're not listening to the church. Good. Second thing is the church leaders, they all denied responsibility. They're all like, what? I didn't send out an email. I would never do this. And I also appreciated that on Reddit and on private Facebook groups, a lot of former members of this church were like gloating and taking victory laps because they're like, I told you this place was shady. Okay, this is from Bob Smetana's Religion News Service article. Let me share this with you. Uh, Church leaders told Religion News Service that the sign up was an unfortunate decision made by a staff member. Which staff member? I don't know. They won't say. But it was totally one rogue employee who sent out that perfectly toned email with links already created. Yeah, it was just one dude. The decision was made without knowledge by senior executive leadership at Lake Point, and the sign up list was immediately taken down as we were made aware of what occurred, said Tim Smith, senior executive pastor. We immediately apologized to our city leaders who made the decision to postpone the traffic count. We're in the process of reaching out to all the leaders who received the sign up and are apologizing to them as well. And as that article says, like a second later, okay, but if it was a mistake from a rogue staffer, why did the pastor of that campus sign up to take a route? Huh? Come on. You guys were in on this. Just say it. That's like Pope Francis saying, oh, sexual abuse in my church? Well, I didn't know anything about it. So, like, stop blaming the Catholic Church. Like, buddy, it happened in your house. It was a bishop somewhere. It was a diocese. Why don't you go take care of it? Um, just a dumb scandal. By the way, it wasn't just the pastor of that campus. Another church leader named Ty Daughtry was also signed up. Like, I don't know who that guy is for the church, but he has a church specific email address. Okay. So when a copy of all this stuff, when this story leaked to a Facebook group that is a private Facebook group for like the city of Rockwall or something, one of the people who chimed in was a guy named Chris Berkeley, whose title at Lake Point Church is lead pastor of creative. Creative what? I don't know. His title is lead pastor of creative. And he wanted everyone to know this is the work of some zealous team member, some rogue staffer, which to be fair is pretty creative. Let me show you what he posted on this Facebook page, which I also got a copy of. As you may have recently heard, I don't care. He's talking about the traffic. Yeah. We want to help Rockwall. We needed to study the traffic. Yeah. A zealous team member made the decision to attempt to sign up people to positively impact the count. That decision was made without knowledge by top leadership and was taken down as soon as it became apparent. This was actually the second attempt at the study as road construction inhibited the first study. I don't know why he said that. Like, yeah, the first one didn't work out because of construction, so we had to lie, everybody. It was the second time. We don't have that many chances left. As well, a few vocal critics of Lake Point were notified of the study and the sign-up list and immediately began to contact Rockwall city officials who understandably made the decision to postpone the traffic count. Like, yeah, they did. Good job, former Lake Point members, for like, that's not tattling. That's informing the public about how they're being cheated. Like, good for the former members. We love our city and have so much respect for our leaders. We will continue to work with the city to make traffic around Lake Point as safe as possible. And that's really an appalling thing to say, in part because if you're asking a ton of people to drive in laps around a road just to juice up traffic numbers, you're making it more likely that an accident is going to happen. He didn't address any of that. They obviously do not care about the environmental impact of putting a bunch of cars on the road for no reason. And you know, they're like all SUVs. He also didn't seem to care that this church is literally asking people to waste their time by driving in circles just to do this in hourly shifts, no less. Like when your cult asks you, hey, I need you to take time out of your day. Don't go to work. I need you to sign up for a time slot and then just drive in circles for no reason. Don't worry about it. Move faster, grandma. But drive. Why? Because we're collecting data and this is how science works. Like just a shady place. All they had to do was nothing. Pony up the cash, pay the engineering firm, get accurate numbers, and let the chips fall where they may. If you need a traffic light there, the city will give it to you. If you don't, then you don't get it. Who cares? It's not the end of the world. You're making enough money. You'll be fine paying the police officers. You know what I mean? I think one of the funniest things about this whole story is that this is not even the first unforced error by the church in a matter of months. Because I talked about this church like a month ago for a very different reason. Because you may recall about a month ago, the lead pastor at Lake Point, his name is Josh Howerton, he made news because he told a joke about how women need to obey their husbands sexually on their wedding nights. The punchline of his stupid joke was just stand where he tells you to stand, wear what he tells you to wear, and do what he tells you to do, ladies. Like, that's what his punchline was. And that joke was bad enough because it just downplayed sexual abuse within marriage and all of that. Like, a woman should just listen to her husband, and they're apparently the husband knows what he wants in the bedroom, even though they're both supposed to be virgins. It's a long story. Go watch that video. I did it a month ago. But I did not talk about this. After he made that stupid joke, like the following week, he apologized to the congregation. And guess what? He made news again because guess why? Another unforced error. Megachurch pastor responds to accusation. He plagiarized his apology for the joke about the wedding nights. This dude plagiarized his apology, and people were like, wait a minute, another pastor said the exact same thing like a month ago because he told a crass joke about breast milk. And then this dude took the same apology for the joke that wasn't funny. Like, oh, do any of these people do anything that's like on the moral high ground? Is everything just the worst option available every single time? My point is, this church has a habit of taking the dishonest path every single time, then never taking responsibility for it. Also, they can tell their sheep how everyone else is immoral because they don't have Jesus in their lives. Like, honesty apparently would work against their best interests, so they're just going to lie. And then when they get caught, they're like, it wasn't us, it was a staffer. Oh, really? What's that staffer's name? What are you going to do? Are you punishing that staffer in any way? Shut up. Like, they're not going to answer that. They're just upset they got caught. I love this scandal. It's so low stakes, so unnecessary, and yet they went full speed ahead with it. All right, let's talk some questions here. All right. I don't think there are any questions. None. One question, maybe. What kind of shady crap is this driving scheme? Gotta love church morals. I mean, if this is what they're teaching from the top down, it does make you wonder what sort of Christians are they trying to build up here? It doesn't look good. Anything else, Den? Oh, that email seems to be of questionable legality. That's a good question. I don't know that anyone's doing anything. If I don't know if this crosses some line, I don't know the answer to that, but just purely on the ethics, it's just a dumb idea. It makes them look really bad. One person is pointing this out. I want to point this out too. All sermons are recycled. There is actually a very big problem among megachurch preachers that a lot of them plagiarize sermons, and it's easy to catch them when they're doing it too, which is weird because they have one job. Like, you have a full week to write a sermon. I'm not saying it's easy, but like, if you can't do it, maybe stop having a gazillion services and you don't need all the churches. Like, you just don't do that. You're not good at your job. Just admit it and move on. I missed the beginning. If there isn't traffic, why do they need a light? The short answer is they say there is a lot of traffic when they have church services. And also, right now, they got to pay the police to direct that traffic. And I don't think they want to do that. So that's why they want a stoplight to prevent all of that. Of course, they could have used the time to work and earn the money to pay for the light. Anyway, why didn't God give them the light? Well, I hate to tell you the answer to this. I don't think they're going to like my answer to this. But I mean, look, the city still has to approve it. That's why they were doing it. But it is telling that, like, what is the church asking their members to do? It's not, hey, let's go volunteer at a food shelter. Here's your sign up genius link. Go sign up for a time slot. It's, hey, oh, we need you to drive in a circle and waste your time so we could stop paying the cops. Like, that's a weird thing for a mega church to be doing, or any church to be doing, any group to be doing. All right. Yes, turn on notifications and check out for free friendlyatheist.com. You'll get all these articles to your inbox directly. All right, I'm going to move on to the next story. Guess what happened today? I don't know if you caught this in the news at all, but today, Thursday, a statue of the Reverend Billy Graham was unveiled in the US Capitol. And there is no good reason that should be going up. So it's important to talk about why that's happening. Because this is why are we putting up a preacher statue in the US Capitol? The bottom line is every state is allowed to put up 2 statues in the Capitol's National Statuary Hall. Every state gets to choose 2 people that like best represents their state. And in 2018, North Carolina's governor, Roy Cooper, who's a Democrat, by the way, he said, we got to take down one of our 2 statues because one of the statues in there was a former governor named Charles Aycock, and he was an avowed white supremacist. And Roy Cooper said, I don't like that this guy's representing our state. I know it makes a lot of people in our legislature and citizens uncomfortable. Why don't we remove that? That guy has outlived his welcome, right? So they wanted to take it down to make room for a second statue. But they actually did this in 2015. They said they're going to replace it with a statue of Billy Graham because he's from North Carolina. But you can't actually make a formal request unless the dude is dead. And Billy Graham didn't die until 2018 at the age of 99. So after 2018, even though everyone in North Carolina seemed to be on board with this, in 2018, they began the process. And I'm going to show you, this is the actual rule book for how to get a statue in the hall. And you don't have to read any of this except to see there are like many, look at the steps in the procedure here. There are many steps that you got to go through to get a statue approved by the Capitol. So all of this has to happen. They started doing all this stuff in 2018. They hired a sculptor to create a model of the statue. They had to get a congressional committee to approve it. For what it's worth, you might be thinking, why is the state paying for a statue of an evangelical preacher? Well, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, his nonprofit group, they are covering the costs of it. It's about $650,000, all things told. They're putting up the money, so taxpayers are not paying for this. But what the statue is, it's a 7-foot tall bronze statue of Graham gesturing toward an open Bible in his hand. He's standing on a pedestal engraved with John 3:16 and John 14:6, like 2 very stereotypical Bible verses. Fine. Because if there's one thing I know about the Bible, it's that God loves idols. So it's not so much a church state separation issue. It's just, yeah, this is a guy who happens to represent North Carolina. He also happens to be a Christian. I don't love it. He's not the only religious leader, though, who has a statue. Like Utah, one of their statues is Brigham Young, the Mormon leader. Hawaii has a Catholic priest named Father Damien. So it's not the only one. But I don't know. If that's the best your state can do, it says a lot about how broken your state is, right? But here's the reason Billy Graham is not a good choice. I know they want to honor him because he's this famous evangelist who is known for like spreading the gospel, and his children are like the Trump children. Like somehow they're even more embarrassing than the old guy. But let's talk about what Billy Graham actually stands for, because here's an example of a transcript of things he said with Richard Nixon, according to tapes that were released. Richard Nixon said, Newsweek is totally, it's all run by Jews and dominated by them in their editorial pages. The New York Times, the Washington Post, totally Jewish too. What does Billy Graham say? This stranglehold has got to be broken or this country is going down the drain. And Nixon's like, the fuck? Do you believe that? Yes, sir, says Billy Graham about the Jews. Like, holy crap, this dude was anti-Semitic. And Billy Graham later apologized for that, but whatever. You said it. We have it on tape. Okay. He also said to Richard Nixon that if he were reelected, we might be able to do something about this problem, by which he meant the Jews. Okay, so that's Billy Graham for you. He obviously also thought everyone who disagreed with his theology was going to burn in hell for eternity, and I don't know why we're celebrating that. He also believed that, where did he say this? He said AIDS was God's punishment for homosexuality. And then later he apologized for that one too, but he did say it. He also urged people, this is a headline from 2012. Billy Graham backs North Carolina anti-gay marriage amendment. I think this was a full-page ad in a bunch of newspapers saying, you guys, don't let same-sex couples get married. It's up for a vote right now. This is before the Supreme Court legalized it. So he was anti-gay near the end of his life. And I think the best example of how horrible he is right here. He knew Martin Luther King Jr. Graham was among the many of King's friends and foes, he was a foe, to comment on the Birmingham marches and the civil rights leaders' imprisonment. Like, Martin Luther King was jailed. He wrote letters. What did he write? Letter from a Birmingham city jail. What did Billy Graham say about all that? Speaking to the New York Times, Billy Graham urged his good personal friend MLK to put the brakes on a little bit. Graham expressed serious doubt that the Negro community there supports it. Like, imagine telling Martin Luther King Jr., slow down with your civil rights push. You're moving too fast. Stay in your lane. Like, that's what Billy Graham represents. Everything that is wrong. Like and even if you look away from all that horrible stuff he said, his claim to fame is perpetuating mythology, which, if he inspired the modern religious right, he has helped steer our country further into a ditch. And even if in his final decade he regretted some of his earlier statements, the things he proudly stood for are not worth defending either. Like, it's one thing for Christians to say they admire Billy Graham because for years he was considered like one of the most admired men in America because there were only like 3 men on TV or something. But if you look at his full resume, including his blemishes and his god awful children like Franklin Graham, people should be embarrassed by what Billy Graham has come to represent. But that is the statue that was unveiled in Statuary Hall today in the halls of Congress. And the funny thing is, you know who the other North Carolina statue now is? Because they took down the white supremacist governor. The other statue that North Carolina has is another former governor named Zebulon Baird Vance, who was a slave owner who served in the Confederate Army. Oh, and he also promoted white supremacy, which means a man who stood for bigotry and oppression now has his statue next to a former governor who was a literal slave owner. I'll stop there. What questions do we have here? No questions. For now, it's all good. I'm going to just keep rolling along here to the next story in just a second. And while we're doing this, hey, if you haven't signed up, go to friendlyatheist.com. Sign up. It's free. You'll get my articles right away, and I would appreciate that. Let me pull this up because there's a couple of video links I want to show you in just a second. All right. Let's talk about Minnesota. It's been a while since we talked about them. So Minnesota is one of those states that has a Democratic trifecta, like by the slimmest of margins, but they're doing a lot of amazing stuff with that trifecta. So one of the bills they've been recently considering is a major education bill. Covers a lot of topics, gives a lot of money. It's actually called like the Education Omnibus bill because it covers so much stuff. And one of the things in that bill is that it would prevent book banning by school districts because a lot of parents are like, get this book out of my school. It has a gay character. And this bill would basically stop random parents from having the ability to get rid of those books. It would put power in the hands of librarians who actually know what they're doing. So all well and good. So there was one Republican who was so mad about that section of the bill because he says you're saying this like liberals are against censorship, but you are supporters of censorship. You are hypocrites, and I know what you have censored. And the lawmaker that I'm going to show you in just a second here is Glenn Gruenhagen. He is a climate denier. He is a Christian nationalist who believes our rights come from God and not from man or government. That's a direct quote. I think the last time I wrote about him was over a year ago because he actually sponsored a bill, a critical thinking bill, that literally would have forced teachers to tell kids, and I'm quoting here, how sickness, disease, pain, suffering, and death are a consequence imposed by the Creator. Like, why do teachers need to waste their time with that? I don't know. That bill thankfully went nowhere because Democrats are in charge. He also fought against anti-gay conversion therapy bans. He said, no, we can't ban the conversion torture stuff because he said it would enable pedophilia somehow. I don't get the logic. Don't ask me. But anyway, this time around, he's mad about this omnibus education policy bill. It passed in the state house about a month ago. Now it was in his chamber in the state Senate this week. And he brought up that section of the bill involving book bans, right? And his argument is that preventing censorship isn't really something liberals care about because, for example, liberals censor history all the time. Let me show you a clip about what he said about history.
Our public schools in general do a lot of censorship, lies, and deceit as far as their curriculum that's being taught to the children. One of the things I found is that we do a lot of censoring in our public schools of our founding documents. In fact, if you'll remember, I brought a recommendation forward on one of the education bills to teach that we're founded as a God-given rights constitutional republic versus a mob democracy, just encouraging that to be taught to our students. And that was voted down by the people on the other side of the aisle.
Why are we lying to our kids? Why are we censoring them why are we censoring material that says we're not really a democracy? How dare these teachers say we live in a democracy when we live in a constitutional republic, which it's one of those dumb talking points because Democrats say Republicans are against democracy. They like suppressing the vote. And Republicans are like, we're not against democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. And that's something they say while they suppress voting rights and things like that. Whatever. It's just a dumb talking point. But in any case, our rights do not come from God, no matter how much people like him want to say otherwise. The fact that he used the word mob as an adjective for democracy tells you a lot about where he's coming from here. In case you're wondering, does this guy follow David Barton, the Christian pseudo-historian? Because he sounds a lot like David Barton. The answer is yeah, he absolutely loves David Barton and telling lies about our history in the name of Jesus. Because what have we learned today? A lot of conservative Christians love to lie in the name of Jesus, and they will always do that if it helps their agenda. But the clip I really wanted to show you is when Gruenhagen started talking about how liberals are censoring science. And this one is wild. And this gets to the heart of like apologetics 101. See if you could figure out rebuttals to what he is saying as he is saying it.
Another area is in science. I find a lot of censorship, lies, and deceit. You know, there's lots of scientific evidence that points to a creator or God. And I'll just give you two. One is the law of cause and effect. For every effect, there's a greater cause. So you have a computer. Did somebody make the computer? If you'd never seen it before, did somebody make the computer? Or did wind, rain, time, and chance blow the computer into existence? Well, the logical conclusion is someone made the computer. Well, your eyeball is millions of times more complex than that computer, and therefore the law of cause and effect has never been contradicted. You have this building, somebody built it. You have the earth, somebody made it. You have the universe, somebody created it. That is a repeatable and observable scientific fact. And yet we censor that from our students.
You know things are bad when a sitting state senator is using Christian Apologetics 101 to argue for why religious fiction should override actual science. Like, okay, let's talk about what he said there. The cosmological argument, this idea that like God created everything, there had to be a first cause, all that stuff. I mean, the short rebuttal is like, if God created everything, who created God? Why is God exempt from that line of questioning, right? But more to the point, there is no scientific evidence that points to God. What is he saying? This is a repeatable and observable scientific fact? Like, no, buddy, it's not. Show us the paper, show us the journal article. It doesn't exist. Just because this guy denies the Big Bang doesn't mean the evidence for it is not overwhelming. Okay. As for the eyeball, he's referring to the old watchmaker analogy that says, like, if you came across a watch in the desert, sure, you have to think someone created that because it's too complex. Well, your eyeball is complex, so someone must have created that. Like, the whole watchmaker analogy has been rebutted for decades. The idea of irreducible complexity, that it could not have evolved because there's no way to get like half an eye. All of that has been refuted. Yes, an eyeball is complicated, but guess what? It is the product of evolution. I trash Richard Dawkins all the time for being anti-trans. However, he wrote a book called The Blind Watchmaker that I thought was a really great explanation of how an eyeball could have evolved. Contrary to Christian belief, half an eye would actually be enormously advantageous to our ancestors. You know what I mean? So all the things he's saying, like, why aren't we teaching creationism to kids here? It's because it's not science. That's not censorship. That's letting people who actually know what they're talking about dictate what kids need to know in their field. You know what I mean? That's how it's supposed to work. So, like in 1859, Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species. In 1925, we had the Scopes monkey trial. And yet this dude, Christians like this guy, still haven't figured out the basics of evolution. They still don't know why their mythology does not qualify as science. And he's really mad because no one takes his delusions seriously, or at least not enough. Not enough people are taking his delusions seriously because everyone else knows what they're talking about. Like, there's no deception or lying or censorship involved. His ignorance is not a good justification to misinform children. It's not censorship to not teach your mythology to kids in a science class. Like, the good news here is that it seems like no one in the Senate cared about what he had to say because that education bill passed in the Senate after he spoke 35-31. Every Democrat voted for it. And in fact, so did one other Republican. So it would have passed even without the Republican support, but it's technically bipartisan. And it'll now head to Tim Walz's desk, the governor's desk. So good. Just an example of what happens when you elect really ignorant people in positions of power instead of actually trying to help students make life better in the education field. You get a guy trying to make an argument for misinforming kids so they would be as dumb as kids in other states, like in red states. Just a messed up thing overall. All right, what questions do we have here? A Republican calling hypocrisy on anyone for censorship is a bit too much for me. How do these men sleep at night? With their interns, usually. Teaching an accurate history is not censorship. It's ridiculous. Absolutely. I mean, these are the people who say you can't teach systemic racism in the classroom because that would hurt our fifis, right? Like, censorship is something conservatives do all the time when it suits their purpose. But they love projection. If there's anything we know from Donald Trump, it's all projection all the time. Our founding documents, should we start with the 3/5 clause? I'm sure that would be an amusing conversation with this rodeo clown. No kidding. All those people who are like, we want to make America great again. When was America great? Oh, like, it's always before the Civil Rights Act. You know what I mean? And our founding documents, yeah, like, let's go back to a time when women couldn't vote, people of color couldn't vote, white guys who didn't own land couldn't vote. Like, we've had to amend it because it was broken to begin with. Why do you want to go back our founding documents? And then they're like, our founding documents were so great. They were created by God. They were infused with the Bible. Like, think of all the things we've had to fix in the Constitution since it was first written. It's like, are you seriously wanting to take ownership of the first like Constitution 1.0? Really? Because I don't know if that's the one you want to be proudest of. A lot of the mess we're in is because they didn't anticipate how shitty we would get. Oh, this guy is not good at apologetics. He's not good at politics either. Yep. Yeah, thank you. Sign up, subscribe. You know the drill. I have one more story for you today. This one made me mad and kind of upset as well. We can remove that banner there. Um, so the last story involves another Christian college, and they recently fired a professor because of old social media posts he made. And usually you can imagine if this happened at like a normal college, it's like, oh, we hired a professor, but oh man, he said some really racist stuff like 10 years ago. No, this Christian college fired a professor because they found posts that were like a year old, 2 years old, in which he expressed support for LGBTQ rights and condemned racism and called out like crazy conservatives. And after a right wing mob basically posted screenshots of those things, this guy named Matthew Warner, who's a first year communications professor, he was fired from Grace College and Theological Seminary in Indiana. So, small Christian seminary in Indiana, not a lot of people there. But what this guy said, Religion News Service, their reporter Catherine Post spoke with him, got a lot of great details for this story. He spoke with her about this, Matthew Warner did, and he said that he went to Grace College and Theological Seminary, even though it was a massive pay cut from his previous job. And why did he go there? Because he said he really admired his future colleagues and he totally agreed with the Christian school's lifestyle commitment. And this is like the contract you have to sign at a lot of really conservative Christian colleges, where it says like you have to agree homosexual behavior is abnormal and you will never do such a thing. And you have to admit marriage is between one man and one woman. And he's a conservative Christian. So he's like, yeah, I sign off on all of that. He's not lying when he signs that contract. So that wasn't a problem. In fact, Matthew Warner, I'll show you a picture here in case you're curious. Matthew Warner actually graduated from Liberty University. So like that school is famous for students signing like a morality contract. So like this is not new for him. He's not a hypocrite. This is what he does. Okay. So what happened is that in his mind, there's no discrepancy between holding conservative theological beliefs about sex and gender and then supporting civil rights for LGBTQ people. There's no cognitive dissonance in saying abortion is a sin, but also I believe, a secular country should allow people to make those decisions for themselves. You can believe the Bible is inspired by God and also accept science. Like plenty of Christians of all stripes do that all the time, even if a bunch of fundamentalists say that's intellectually dishonest. And even if a bunch of atheists, new atheists, say, no, the only true Christians, I'm screwing this up, but like, true Christians have to believe X, Y, and Z. And if you don't believe that stuff, you're not a true believer. Like, no, you're wrong. Plenty of people have nuance to this stuff all the time. What this guy, Matt Warner, didn't realize is that he would be called out for all of these beliefs. So let me show you what happened to this guy. Here is, he got hired last summer. And then on October 3rd, this is a post that was made on Facebook by Monica Boyer, who I think is just one of those like perpetually angry moms. I'm officially calling on Grace College to fire this professor immediately. All caps. What did he do? What is this tweet? Let's see. From September of 2022, like a year before he was hired, I support gay marriage because I love my neighbor. Men who have been married for 20 years should have the right to be present when end-of-life decisions are being made. Supporting gay marriage is a civic issue and an expression of democratic liberalism. Opposing it is bigotry. Like, wow, yes. This is the position a lot of religious conservatives took when, like, we were thinking about civil unions or gay marriage. It's like, I don't have to think this is what God wants. But if two people are in a relationship and it's consensual and they're adults, and we're saying, well, you can't come in a hospital to visit your partner because you're in a same sex relationship, that seems immoral and wrong. And this guy's saying, I don't know why they shouldn't have that right. Even if I don't want them married in my church, I don't want my church supporting that marriage, but I think they should have civil rights. So I support their right to do that. That to me is not hypocrisy. I think I have questions about why he believes that it's a sin, but whatever. He found a way to say, like, whatever. It's like Joe Biden, who I talked about earlier. He's a Catholic. He very much believes abortion is a sin. But as a politician, he thinks women should have the right to make their own decisions, something Donald Trump does not believe. Like, does that make Joe Biden a hypocrite? No, it means he knows how to separate his religious views from his job, which is what you expect from any decent politician. So that part is weird, that this woman is saying, how dare he post this stuff. But that wasn't the big one. The big one came from this guy right here. His name is Evan Kilgore, Evan Aaron on Facebook. But let's read through some of this. It goes on for a while. Grace College friends and family. I don't want this post to come off in tone as a disgruntled ex-employee who is seeking some sort of retribution, yada, yada, yada. What else does he say? Grace recently hired a new professor to teach communications. Yeah. To say he has, at the very least, some concerning and hostile ideological views that do not quite align with scripture or biblical theology would be a fair assessment. I will share screenshots from the Twitter, now known as X, account of this employee. And look at this. How many does he share? 62 plus. Like, he posted like 65, 66 images of Facebook screenshots of what this guy did. And then he asked this. Read this with me. Ask yourself, do these views align with the integrity of biblical principles you would like potentially taught to your young, impressionable child? This is a seminary. It's a college. These are 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. They're not children. What the heck? Like, parents, do you want your 19-year-old toddler to learn that gay people are people? I swear to God, the hallmark of like white evangelical thinking is we have to treat adults as toddlers. That's why we can't talk to them about sex. That's why racism is too nuanced for them to deal with. Like, it's the whole, okay. Will these views be implicitly or explicitly taught in the classroom? Are these the views you believe Grace College should bolster and platform? Can a professor with this strong of a clearly radicalized ideological hatred of right-wing political views truly be an unbiased voice of Christian theology in a young person's life? When he says radicalized ideological hatred, he actually posted a tweet saying Tucker Carlson is fascist. And he said that about other right-wing figures too. And he's right about every single one of them. That doesn't make him radicalized. That makes him a good observer. You know what I mean? Okay, what else does this dude say? At what point does exposing young individuals to those whom hold those harsh views clash with the mission of the institution? Is this the type of rhetoric you'd like to see spoken by those teaching young Christians fresh out of their parents' nest, these 19-year-old toddlers, and digesting new worldviews? Oh my God. Imagine being 18 years old and you're going to college, and this dude is like, they're young little birds fresh out of the nest, and for the first time in their life, they're learning new ideas. Like, what have they been doing for the past, I don't know, 12 years of formal schooling? There are many questions to be asked indeed. Okay, so once that guy posted this, all hell broke loose. because a lot of people started sharing that document. um, by the way, those posts, I'm not going to show you all 66 posts that Matthew Warner made. But in addition to saying Tucker Carlson is fascist, he said Christians should care about the treatment of immigrants a lot more than gay marriage. He posted his pronouns. He rejected complementarianism because, unlike Harrison Butker, he doesn't think women need to be in the house and in the kitchen all the time. He criticized Donald Trump, and you know that was the cardinal sin. One of his tweets said, "If one more Christian preacher repeats the talking points of GOP strategists, I'm going to scream." Touche. Another one pointed out that a pro-life movement that emphasizes legal and political influence does not produce pro-life outcomes. And you know what? He's right about that, because as we have seen, because we had the legal overturning of Roe v. Wade and then like the political push to ban abortion in a lot of red states, a lot of doctors are leaving those states. A lot of women are having horrible medical care, or they have to escape from their state in order to get decent medical care. And none of that is winning people over to the anti-abortion side. So he's right on that front too. So anyway, Kilgore says he can't imagine someone like Matt Warner in charge of a classroom at a Christian college, which is weird. Just to answer the obvious question here, though, there is no evidence Matt Warner was letting any of his personal beliefs interfere with the job he was supposed to do. No one was complaining about his teaching style. No one was arguing that he was opposing the school's mission. In fact, his performance reviews and student evaluations were excellent, as far as I know. The critics were just mad about those old tweets, even though Warner agrees with their theology. But none of that matters to them because they think being a true Christian means accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior and believing that gay people have cooties and voting for Donald Trump no matter what, and lying in the name of Jesus as long as it suits your purpose. And the thing is, if it was just these couple of idiots on Facebook, that's one thing. But the people running the school swallowed all of it. Like, it says a lot about their hiring process that none of these tweets even came up when they were looking into this guy. But the administration soon told Warner, we're probably going to get rid of you. And look at some of this stuff. This is appalling behavior. Because remember, this guy took a pay cut and moved to Indiana for this job. This is from Religion News Service. Warner proactively met with supervisors as that first woman's Facebook post repeated demands gained traction among her nearly 8,000 Facebook followers. But initial conversations were not reassuring. Flam, who's the president of the school, and Beckett, the chief human resources officer, told Warner he wasn't yet a faculty member because the board hadn't ratified him. Now the board was considering voting against his ratification, a move that would end his employment. And later on, look at this. They've created a caricature of me based on taking a very small number of social media posts out of context, Warner said. I was treated from the beginning as a threat or liability, and nobody at any time had a conversation with me about what I believe or what I'm willing to do to support the college. Like, imagine treating this professor with such disrespect. And ultimately, that is how this all ended, because one more thing to show you here. After 4 months on the job, Warner was informed by the school's president, Drew Flam, that the board had come to the conclusion that we don't think it works out to move forward, according to a recording obtained by Religion News Service. So they fired him. I would also point out, he said elsewhere in the article that the school initially told him you can voluntarily resign or go through like a re-education camp to restore trust. But first of all, there was no re-education camp. They never even offered him the ability to go through like rehab, Christian rehab. And in December, when the board voted to get rid of him, he was actually offered $60,000 to just leave quietly, voluntarily resign. But he had to sign a non-disclosure agreement to never talk about any of this. He said no to that. He said no to $60,000, and he said no to the NDA. And now he has recordings and he shared them with Religion News Service, which is why they can tell his story, because it's backed up by recordings and everything. I would also say that Warner tried to file a formal grievance with the college saying the board is violating its own policies by removing him from the faculty. But when you file a grievance, guess who gets the final say on it at this school? It's the president of the school, who is the judge and jury, who is the guy who told him, yeah, you're not going to make it here. So they just dismissed the grievance complaint. To me, none of this is all that surprising. Like, you can't work at a conservative Christian school and then expect they're going to treat you with dignity. They never do that. What, name a Christian college that has a good reputation for treating people well? We already know their positions on like civil rights, on gay people. Like, why would they treat you any differently? You're dispensable. You're disposable. They're leaders and donors at the schools. They've made it very clear over the years that they expect every employee to fall in line with their beliefs theologically, but also with all the culture war issues. And those always seem to take precedence over theological disagreements. The funny thing is, if Matt Warner said, I disagree with young earth creationism, he could probably keep his job at the school because, of course, salvation to Christians does not matter how old you think the earth is. But if you vote for Joe Biden, that could apparently get you fired because you have a sensible view of the world. Like, I don't know what the rules are here. I want to show you one other thing, which is the contract that these people have to sign, because I want to show you one thing. This is the lifestyle contract that professors have to sign. Look at this paragraph right here. We make use of biblically based practices such as arbitration, mediation, grace, restoration, forgiveness, and redemption to live at peace with each other and strive to resolve disagreements in private or within the Christian community using biblical principles. Well, what did they do with Matt Warner here? They said, well, yeah, but someone tweeted about you and we don't like that, so we're not going to do any of those things. So, yeah, I get why this guy filed a grievance against the school because they're not following their own contract. But again, this is what you should expect if you get a job at a Christian college. People who are on this school's payroll or pay tuition, they're not signing up to be challenged or to become a colleague to influential academics. They're just hoping to remain in a right-wing bubble for a little while longer. And when a professor breaks that mold, parents are going to complain. The administration is going to eventually take the parents' side because those are the people who pay the bills. It makes you wonder, like, what are the rules anymore? There's a writer I really admire, Fred Clark. He writes as Slacktivist on Patheos, and he wrote about this too. I wanted to share one thing that he wrote with you, because he wrote about like what are the rules at this college, because Matt Warner didn't know he was breaking any of them, and because he's been fired, it raises a question of where does the line get drawn? There's no official announcement of this, but suddenly everyone just kind of realizes that a new unwritten rule exists and a new invisible line has been drawn. Some trustee or big donor gets a bee in their bonnet about Obamacare, and suddenly opposition to contraception is a new mandatory stance. Vaccination is now controversial. Climate change has become such a third rail that you're not sure you could safely talk about energy efficiency. A student asks you if you think that Black Lives Matter, and rather than saying what any decent person would obviously and always say, of course, you worry it's a trap. You realize you can't be sure what the new rules are today, and you have no way of knowing what new rule might arise tomorrow. That is now the concern I would have for any professor at Grace College, which is this guy got fired for saying Tucker Carlson is fascist, which he is. So what are they going to get punished for? If they put out any opinion or belief that isn't specifically listed in the documents or something, if they have any sort of opinion that might offend somebody, they could stand to lose their job. And the college isn't telling anybody what those rules are because they're making it up as they go along. And that's disturbing. I'm going to end this story with one last thing here. Before I get to that, it's amazing what message this sends to students too. Like, what? Expand your mind. You're at college. It's what you're supposed to do, but not that much, or else we're going to punish you for that. And you would think Grace College would have learned their lesson, because this is not the first time there has been a clash involving faculty members, because I want to show you one last thing here, which is that a few years ago, the marketing department at this university, at Grace College, they decided they would hold a theme day. It's called Wrap Day, WRAP, Wrap Day. So students were served lettuce wraps in the cafeteria. I'm not sure what else was involved with the theme. Maybe they wore togas. I don't know. But a handful of faculty members back in 2017, when this happened, said, wouldn't it be hilarious for Wrap Day if we, the whites, posed as rap artists for an album cover? And they created this album cover. Oh my God, let me show it to you. Boom. Look at this. NGA. I don't know what any of that stands for, but I want to show you the bottom here. Homeschool advisory, gangsta content. My eyes are blinded by the white. The dude above me has an afro wig. I'm offended by that. I'm offended by that dude's stance, whatever he's trying to do. But I want you to take a special close look at that guy on your far left, the guy going like this. I don't know if you could see the fake knuckle tattoos he has. It says Thug Life because, as you could tell, he's from the mean streets. Because guess who that guy in the black shirt going like this in the corner? Guess who that is? That would be Evan Kilgore, the guy who posted the Facebook message with 66 screenshots from Matthew Warner's Twitter page. Same dude. This guy, that guy, I can't do this. Evan Kilgore, he later got fired for this little stunt of his. Let me show you this one thing right here. He actually, it's so cringy what he did that Grace College said, like, we can't have you all here. So a couple of employees got fired over the mock rap album photo. And what happens when you get fired when you're a conservative Christian for something like this? You know how the game is played. You take the Dave Silverman route. You basically say, I got canceled by the woke mob for doing something hilarious or something, and how dare they come after me? So Evan Kilgore ended up getting a job at Charlie Kirk's group, talking, or whatever, one of those dudes' groups, Turning Point USA. And I want to share this archived thing with you. This is his bio from the website for Turning Point USA, because let's zoom in on this here. He was a TPUSA ambassador who began sharing his views on Twitter in 2017 after getting canceled from his marketing job by the woke outrage mob. The woke outrage mob he is talking about is Grace College and Theological Seminary, the group that just fired a guy for saying like Black Lives Matter and gay marriage is fine as a policy. Like, that's your woke outrage mob. It's the Christian Seminary. And again, it's funny, but the Christian college administrators listened to that guy, the guy who complained about them being a woke outrage mob, because he said this professor is evil and he's going to teach your kids things, your 19-year-old baby angel. And we can't have that happen now, can we? I don't know why they're listening to him. It's just messed up. By the way, Evan Kilgore, now today, he doesn't work for TPUSA. He collaborates with and supports Nick Fuentes, who is a white supremacist. So if the school is taking direction from this guy, Evan Kilgore, while getting rid of a professor who made the mistake of showing compassion and understanding and a desire for social justice, like, what is this school doing? What are they teaching students? Have they learned anything since firing the cringeworthy rap dude? Like, I would argue a diploma from a seminary like this one is already pretty useless, but they're just making it worse, because if you're graduating from this school, you're going to be embarrassed to tell people where you went to school, because when they look it up, these are the articles that are going to come up. It's Evan Kilgore acting like a rap artist and the school firing Matt Warner for showing compassion to gay people. Like, why would you want to go to this school? It's a horrible look for the school, even as a conservative Christian school. I think I'm going to stop there. I'll take any last questions, but that's all I got. And if there are, what do we have here? Understanding freedom takes effort. Understanding a specific authority figure is easy. No kidding. Like, it takes guts to push against the grain, and actually understand the nuance of what people are protesting and fighting for. And it's not just like some woke mob or whatever buzzwords the right uses. Like, it's very easy to just fall in line. What Matt Warner did was it's not courageous, because what he did wasn't courageous. It was just honest. Every one of you probably watching this is more courageous than he is on these issues. But given his bubble, it's not bad. And they're punishing him for it. It's sad to see. I hope he continues fighting against them. I don't know what options he has. I don't know if he can file a lawsuit over it because it's a private school, but I hope he keeps pushing back. It's infuriating that so many Christians believe that sin should be illegal. Screw off, idiots. Even God supposedly gave us free will, right? And you know what? I agree with you to the extent that what they define as sin is everything. Like, it's not don't murder, that's bad, because as many people have argued, like, yeah, that one makes sense. But it's never just that. They just say everything we don't like is a sin. It's like having premarital sex is a sin, and saying Black Lives Matter, that's a new sin because we know you're really saying you hate white people. Like, they just make it up as they go along, and then their politicians try to, you know, legislate that, which is even more disturbing. But again, yeah, let people live the lives they want to live as long as they're not hurting people. Who cares? I don't know. It's very hard for them to understand because apparently they don't learn a new idea until they turn 18. Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you next week. I'll be back Friday next weekend. I hope you will join me too. And thank you to Den for helping out with all the moderating and comments. And then I'll leave this down here. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.